It don't matter if you're blue or white.
And suddenly you see, and then Richter Belmont points his finger in the air and there's a whip crack.
Hello, and welcome to episode 140 of Rhythm Encounter, the RPG fan music podcast. I'm your host, Mike Salbato, and today we are going to be talking about DS games. But I am not alone in this episode. I have three wonderful people here with me, starting with Retro Encounter host, Mike Sollosi.
I have done solo podcasts before, but not for Retro Encounter. Trust me, it's a bad idea. Stick to having a panel of 2+. Just trust me on this one.
That's always the plan, but I'm happy to have you here as one of the four. Also with us today is Gio.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. And Patrick is rounding out our panel today.
Ready to rock and roll.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to this episode. I'm excited about this. This is actually it's not really a two-parter, but we're doing DS games and next time we're doing PSP games. So in my head, it's basically a two-parter, or at least a pairing of episodes. So I'm excited about it. You know, we have a PSP feature on RPG Fan that somehow years and years and years later remains one of the most popular things on the site. So I feel like doing some podcasts about the DS and PSP should be popular too. So, and actually, I'll talk about this later, but many of these songs today are things that haven't featured on the show before. So, or games that have not been on the show. So I think that's exciting. We got a lot of new things to talk about here. So like I always do right before we get into it, I do like asking people like what drew you to this episode? What made you want to join this one on DS games? So let's start with Pat.
Oh gosh. Well, I really like the idea of doing topic by console. In fact, did we do a Game Boy Advance one recently?
We did. I hosted that one.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I really like the concept, and I really think handheld soundtracks, like soundtracks for handheld games or mobile games, aren't as well recognized often, and I think there's a lot to love, and so I just love celebrating this music.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. How about you, Gio?
Well, the DS is probably my favorite console, and I've been exposed to a lot of the songs, to a lot of the games that we're going to feature today. And yeah, I think it's not really talked about as much as the Game Boy Advance or even the 3DS for some reason. So I just want to help, spread the word that there's some really good games and really good music on the console.
Yeah. How about you, Sollosi?
I think it's more that I really look fondly back at the DS PSP era of dueling handhelds because there were so many games I loved on both consoles, and both consoles seem to have their own identity and difference of user experience. Without trying to fan any flames of the console wars, the DS kicked the PSP's ass in terms of sales and reach, but I really like both of those consoles so much that it just sounded really fun to revisit 8 or so DS games, most of which I've played. But there's a couple deep cuts in here that are pretty fascinating. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I would consider one of those definitely in our first block. And I'm not talking about mine. The DS is kind of a weird one for me because I find the DS fascinating, but I definitely played more games on the GBA and 3DS. So I don't know if that's related to like what you said, Pat. Like, it's not a blind spot. I have DS games, but for some reason I didn't play as many as the consoles right before and after. Mm-hmm. So this was fun for me too, because like I went through a list of games that I've either started or never played or wanted to play, and it's been a fun discovery of things that just I kind of missed in that specific time period. So, all right. Well, why don't we get into our first block here then? And we are starting with me. So I wanted to go with something really cool, and this is one that I always forget exists. My first song is from Soma Bringer, a Monolith Soft game that did not leave Japan, at least not officially. So my first track is Amaty, the Ancient City from Soma Bringer. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring that is because this soundtrack is by Yasunori Mitsuda. So really excited about that. And then after that, we are listening to your first song, Pat.
Yeah, I picked a song called Yellow Brick Road, and as you might imagine, that comes from a Wizard of Oz game. Yes, there was a Wizard of Oz RPG. It was called The Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road. It's called Rizowad in Japan. We'll talk more about that later. And this one is composed by Hitoshi Sakimoto of Base Escape. So when you hear the soundscape, you'll know what's up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, let's go listen to Amaty, the Ancient City and Yellow Brick Road. So as you may imagine, I have not played Soma Bringer because, well, like we talked about, it was not released outside of Japan. I actually realized doing research for this episode, there was a fan translation patch. I'm not sure when it came out. I think it was actually a while ago now. So that makes me curious. Just the fact that it's kind of weird looking back now. There's a Monolith game, or a Monolith Soft game, not Monolith, which is a different developer, being unlocalized, because at one time that was commonplace, and that led us to things like Operation Rainfall and all that. But now like they've just gotten bigger. So if there's Xeno in the title and Monolith made it, like it pretty much always comes out here. So this is an interesting one. Like it was their first game after Nintendo acquired them, and it just never got localized. But it looks really cool, and obviously Mitsuda doing the soundtrack is very fascinating and interesting to me. I'm just going to keep saying fascinating, apparently. So I listened to a lot of the soundtrack before settling on this one. There's so many great pieces in there, but I settled on this one because I just really enjoy the energy of it. It's this cool, it's like this nice bouncy energy to it. The central motif is really like an earworm. Like after I finished like picking my songs for the day, I was still hearing it like for hours afterwards. So there's obviously something to it there. It has a really nice like percussion layer that drives the song along, and as far as I can tell, everything here is synthesized. So I'm just going to describe the higher notes as an electronic triangle, for lack of any better description. And I think that just those notes really contribute to the upbeat energy of it. So I had a lot of fun with it. But I will say too, like you should be able to find it on YouTube. Apparently the version I listened to was only uploaded 6 months ago. So who knows how long it sticks around before Nintendo has it removed. But if you can find it, check it out. There's a lot of great tracks in this one. I don't know if it will ever get localized officially. And that's not just because the DS is kind of a weird one to, revisit on consoles without 2 screens. But maybe one day. Maybe they'll remaster it or remake it one day.
Now the Super Switch 2 Turbo is going to have a second screen, and then we'll have a fully fully emulated DS thing for Switch Online members. Mark my words.
I mean,
this isn't the prediction episode.
This is not the prediction episode. That would be entertaining, though.
I was gonna bring it up because I just listened to that episode, and then I was like, oh, I wish someone said like, oh, the Switch 2 is gonna have like a dual screen, because like that's what I want.
Right,
but I don't know.
I would love a way to replay or to play a bunch of classic DS games again on some version of modern hardware. But if analog isn't around to make delete that. If analog doesn't make a DS box in the near future, maybe it'll be the next Switch. I don't know, but this almost screams missing classic. Soma Bringer does.
Yeah, I honestly thought that was going to happen with the Switch, because early on, I know there was a couple games that came out as like playable only in like vertical orientation, but like there was never really official support for it. Like if you rotate the Switch and they made some kind of dock or something, it could have worked. You could have like used that as 2 screens, but who knows? So the Wizard of Oz track, I have less to say about, mostly because I also haven't played this one. But I still find it incredibly fascinating that there was a Wizard of Oz RPG. And of all the things, despite its reputation, that it actually got localized here by Exceed Marvelous, one of those.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The game itself aside, I don't know. But I love that Sakimoto did the soundtrack. Like there are some moments on here that are like very distinctly his work. Like I'm like, oh, I could pick that out without even knowing that was him. But there's some like familiar feel to it, but it's a little more magical and whimsical than he usually does, or like gets to do for that matter, on like Final Fantasy games and some other things he's worked on. So like I don't hear that specific sound from him a lot, so that was cool to hear here. I think it really does well at conveying that sense of traveling to another world and just the magic of it all very well. So yeah, That was a cool one. I'm guessing you know a little more about the game than I do, Pat. But I enjoyed the track, and it's one of those games I forget exists. So I'm glad it's here today.
Yeah, I did play the game start to finish. I won't say I regret doing it, but probably better games I could have played at the time. I think Kim Wallace did the review of the game for RPG Fan, and yeah, her take is, I would agree with her take if anyone goes back and reads that article. But I think the soundtrack's probably the best thing about the game. The whole soundtrack's done by Bass Escape, except for the opening and ending tracks were by Michiko Naruke, who did the early Wild Arms soundtracks. And she had actually not done any game music for like nearly a decade. And then this was her first thing back before she went on to do Toki Towa and then a bunch of other stuff. But there are these vocal tracks that are pretty good. But I really like with Sakimoto and some of the other folks, Kimihiro Abe, before he left Bass Escape, he did some tracks on this one. And yeah, this was written and published in around the same time as FF12 and Final Fantasy Tactics A2, the DS one. And you can definitely tell like a lot of the synths used and the style of it feels very Sakimoto. It's very playful, feels very colorful, like that world. Like it's this very bright, colorful game in this fantasy version of Oz that is somehow both brighter and darker than the original film. But yeah, I love the sound. I love the tone. I love how silly this particular track is. This is one of the earliest areas in the game since you start on the Yellow Brick Road. I just think it's a fun song. I also think Amity, the Ancient City, is also more upbeat than what I was expecting and than what I remembered from the Soma Bringer soundtrack when it first came out. I remember thinking to myself when you picked this one, Mike, I was like, Mitsuda, it's going to be very new age ethnic world kind of song. And it still has a bit of that in there, like no doubt, but like it's a good, fun, upbeat, major key kind of piece. Actually it might cycle major and minor, but great piece. And doesn't suffer from the sort of tinny compression that some DS games have, and certainly many GBA games had, which I think we talked about on the GBA episode. I think it came out sounding really good on the DS, which not every DS game succeeded at that. From a sound programming perspective, you had to be smart about that to make it sound good on the platform, and I think they did a good job with the Soma Bringer soundtrack.
Yeah, the DS has a pretty good versatile sound chip, but at least the original machine had a pretty terrible speaker. So that was one system that I think benefited a lot from a headphone jack.
Yep, headphones. Yep.
But anyway, I think these songs are both interesting in that they're sort of positively toned, quirky songs. I don't know the context of Amity, the Ancient City, but I mean, it sounds like it's probably the town music for Amity, the Ancient City. It does have slightly quirky percussion driving it forward. I like the plucked strings counter melody, and it gives the feeling of a bustling city that and perhaps a safe space as well. And Yellow Brick Road, I mean, of course, this is where my brain went because it's one of my pet series, but this feels like a Sakimoto version of a Tenpei Sato Disgaea soundtrack, and how it is deliberately offbeat and quirky. Patrick said playful and silly, which I agree with, and I mean, just things like just things like the like the sort of the melody being exchanged by these winds that are just sort of I don't know, like tremoloing weirdly, and woodblock is a percussion instrument that either makes you sound like you're in a circus or that there's a horse walking nearby. So yeah, positive, upbeat, early game, possibly. I truly do not know for Soma Bringer songs that yeah, I'm sure add to the character of their games. Neither of which I've played. I think I've played 5 of the 8 games on this list, but regrettably 2 of them are in the first block. 2 of the missing ones.
I've played Summerbringer, and regrettably, I don't think it was. It wasn't super memorable for me. Well, what was memorable was the soundtrack, though. Like, I definitely remember Amaty, and now it's been stuck in my head since like I started listening to the playlist. For sure, it's definitely one of the more earwormy tracks here, and yeah, it's a good song. It's a good song. Like the I think the location itself didn't have people, I think, or it kind of did. I can't remember, but
So it's not bustling at all.
yeah, it's actually not. But I don't know. I our listeners can correct me there, but it's a very good. It's very good. Like Mitsuda doesn't really miss. Neither does Sakimoto. Actually, it's like our whole playlist here is like kind of a murderer's row of like really famously good composers. So,
That's actually
yeah.
true. I
That's
hadn't
very true.
gone down and thought about that, but that's true.
hmm yeah, and actually, what stood out to me about Riz Zawad, the Yellow Brick Road, is it sounds very similar to Sakimoto's work on Odin Sphere. I think it's the only other time like he's gotten to compose tracks like kind of whimsical like this. And I don't know if he did if he contributed to Grim Grimoire. I think that's also more of the same, very vanillaware stuff. And yeah, I really enjoyed it too. It's it, he's just good. Like I love like the little like I don't know. It's like a very layered composition. It's very simple at first, but like there's a lot of stuff going on other than the main melody, which is like really nice. And like the DS kind of allows for this kind of thing now. When the Game Boy, I think, had a very limited number of tracks available, right? And you had to make do with like a Game Boy earlier like kind of synthesizer. Not really sure what to call it, like where it's like chiptune-y. This one, the composer started to go all in with like sound fonts and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a good example of how composers started to make their music on the platform.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of good songs today that showcase that. So, as the only one here that's played Somabringer, then is this one of those things where one of those games where we think it's like, oh wow, that they never brought it out here because of whatever? Like I've seen speculation that's like there's too much text and they didn't want to localize it, or is it really just that maybe they didn't think it was that great? Maybe it wasn't worth it. I don't know. I feel like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think it stacks up against like the very best of the DS. I would say.
I would still be curious if they did anything with it. I just, it's one of those things that it makes me think of going back again to Operation Rainfall, like those 3 games that came out. Like everyone was like, "Oh, these are fantastic," and I feel like the reception to each of them went down a little bit. Like Xenoblade, yes, of course. I know a lot of people like Last Story, but I also often hear that it's like so. And I feel like Pandora's Tower is loved the least of the 3. So it's kind of interesting that it's like everyone like wanted it to come out, but I'm like, maybe, I don't know, maybe there was a reason it didn't originally.
Well, I mean, to say nothing about the quality of those games, I have played The Last Story, but not Pandora's Tower. I mean, they'll always be better when they're more the idea of a game and not something in your hand. Mm-hmm. So people, I mean, so at least during the movement to have those 3 games localized, the idea of them was very, very powerful. That there were these 3 brilliant RPGs confined to Japan, and when they did come out, I mean, then we had to be confronted with the reality of them, and maybe the reality was not the same as that expectation. But I mean, I think that The Last Story is very good and Xenoblade is excellent. So I'm not. I don't want to sound like I'm uh, I'm hating on any of those games, but I think the idea of a game that is out of reach will always be more powerful than the actual game when you're confronted with playing it.
Yeah,
That's deep.
I can see it. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I haven't played Pandora's Tower, but at the same time, the whole concept of it is so bizarre to me that I want to, and I'm good with, and maybe that's the reason. Whatever. We're not here to talk about Pandora's Tower, but now it makes me want to play it. Instead, how about we go on to our second block today, so we can talk about one of Sollosi's songs.
Sure, I am a creature of habit and predictable as hell on Rhythm Encounter, so naturally I got just two games from two of my favorite series. The first one is the Guitar's Serenade by Shu Takumi from Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, which is the fourth Ace Attorney game, and this particular arrangement is by Noriyuki Iwadare, and it's from the Gyakuten Saiban Tokubetsu Hotel 2008 concert album. There was a previous 2006 album, so this is the second one of those arranged albums for Ace Attorney.
Nice. And my second song comes after that, which is Beyond the Pale Blue Sky by Kenji Ito, and that's from Children of Mana. So let's go listen to the Guitar's Serenade and Beyond the Pale Blue Sky.
Right, so that was the Guitar's Serenade and Beyond the Pale Blue Sky. I realized now, it probably seconds after that I said it. It's Gyakuten Saiban Tokubetsu Hōtei, not hotel. It was just the text looked a little funky on my monitor, I suppose. But yeah, you weren't mishearing me. That is a song by Shu Takumi, the creator of Ace Attorney, who is not a trained composer. That's because in the original version, the Guitar Serenade is like just a 30-second or so clip that's part of the story and not really background music or part of the official soundtrack. It's a musical performance within the game, and I mean, I don't think this really counts as a spoiler, but a murder takes place backstage during that performance, and the performers on stage are involved with the murder. One's a prosecutor, the other two are suspects or witnesses. And also during the course of the investigation, like, you have to analyze this the song in the game to determine when the incident happened, when one of the performers might have heard a gunshot. It's very cool, but it's not a fully realized song, which this version is. The arrangement from the 2008 concert and corresponding album is a fully realized song, mostly sung in English, and I'm not saying that the performer is as hauntingly beautiful as La Miroir from the game it allegedly is, because I mean the original game's vocals are sort of like, like fake vocalizations, like, Super Nintendo Final Fantasy VI opera scene a little bit, but it's a very pleasant melody that has a lot of meaning within the game, and for them to give it this fully loaded arrangement is really lovely, and I love the accompaniment, the strings and everything else. There's not a ton of guitar for being called the Guitar's Serenade, but even if you haven't played Apollo Justice, I urge you to look at the in-game video for this performance, because it's hysterically funny without context, because a guitar bursts into flames out of context and things get very chaotic in the background while this siren is sort of performing in the middle of it. It's very funny. It's a very positive memory of a game that I think is a little underrated within the Ace Attorney canon, but has a very good soundtrack, and I went with a somewhat offbeat pick from an Arrange album just because it's so peculiarly separate from the rest of the soundtrack, being like sort of in-game like a story audio given a full remaster. But unlike but to switch it up a little bit, I think Ace Attorney 4 is a very good underrated game. I would not give the same qualifier to Children of Mana, which is part of the rather unfortunate combo of mid-2000s Mana games that I think might have even turned off Square Enix from making very more of them for several years afterwards. I did play Children of Mana. It's kind of a dungeon crawler with 4 selectable characters that is sort of okay until it isn't. Like it gets sort of samey and boring. I think gameplay wise, I never finished it, but the soundtrack is really good. I don't think I've listened to it all the way through before, but Beyond the Pale Blue Sky reminds me a little bit of Into the Thick of It from Secret of Mana, which is a very early game theme with some harpsichord counter melody and Woodwind's lead part, but it's like it gives you the feeling of adventure and danger, but also this sort of pastel colored beauty that is the palette of the Mana series. It's a very, very good song, but I have to admit I don't care for the game from what I've played of it.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. Was Children right before or right after Dawn?
Oh boy,
before.
It was before. Okay.
I remember Heroes being after Children, but
I think it's Children, Heroes, and then Dawn. I think.
I'm not sure, but I mean, Dawn was a PS2 2 game.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I thought Dawn was earlier, but none of them I would recommend. I'm
Yeah.
very as a sort of lapsed Mana fan that only truly adores one game in the series. I'm very excited for Visions of Mana. Not interested in going back to Children of Mana.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it too. I almost actually said something about that. I was like, oh, it sounds like I was trying to figure out a way where to compare it to other Mana songs, but you got it right, into the thick of it. So, but the woodwind themes or woodwind sounds in this are really good. I enjoyed them a lot. I like how all the layers of the song like play together and how they build on each other, and then a few times during the song, different ones drop out, and I don't know. It's definitely a fun song, and again, from the sounds of it, better than the game it's in. But that's okay. I'm still glad we have the song and the soundtrack. And well, this is going to sound like a repeat, but whatever. It's in my notes. But yeah, I think agree that it has a really strong sense of adventure and motivation to explore, beyond the, yeah. So regardless of how the game is, I'm happy we have the soundtrack. And then for Ace Attorney, like this was, I knew you wanted to bring something from the series to the episode, but I definitely wasn't expecting this. There's so many albums, like soundtracks, and then other things like these orchestra albums and live performances. And I hadn't really listened to many of them. I know we had a jazz one on a prior episode. So this was great. I saw like their first orchestra style album was like orchestra style arrangements, but it wasn't a live performance, or at least not like with an audience, right? But this one, I mean, that must have been super cool. Like if there was an audience for this, like to see that live, and especially with the vocalist, I think she really adds a lot to the song. And also, given that she has over 500 credits on VGMDB, well, I guess she's been busy over the years, huh?
Yeah, I want to point out how funny the album cover is. Like, there's so much funny details going on. Like, but I think that's Maya Fey pointing a trumpet or trombone at Phoenix's face, and then there's Franziska von Karma whipping Gumshoe off his chair. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Oh, I had the actually I want to say like I had the opposite feeling from Sollosi with this song, like the original version of this song, because like I found this case incredibly hard. I found it so hard to observe, like what's wrong with the video. Like I think it took me like an hour to figure out what the problem was, and like the song got really too much for me at the end. I was like, oh no, I just put it on mute, I think. And yeah, but this version is far superior. It's like a full version of the song, and then like the strings in the background is just beautiful. So yeah, I really appreciated like finding out about this song.
Yeah, I memory might be betraying me here because I played this game 15 years ago or longer, but you have to watch the video and listen to the performance and figure out at the exact point where one of the performers hesitates, and you realize that's where that performer only heard the gunshot, basically. But it's messy. There's there's an illusionist. There's a band. One person's pretending to be blind. One person is pretending to not be blind. There's a smuggling ring. It gets out of control very quickly in Ace Attorney fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with implications for the whole game, if I remember right.
Oh yeah, key characters from those scenes come back for the final case as well. This is not the final case of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, sorry Mike, I interrupted you, but
no, I was done. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, okay. So but anyway, Children of Mana, I feel like it's a running theme throughout like the whole Mana series, where like even if the game is not very good, like the soundtrack is good, and it's really just all on Kenji Ito. I think I remember I brought a song from Dawn of Mana, and like we were like talking about how like the soundtrack is like far better than the actual game, and I guess the same is true for Children of Mana. Yeah, And like same observation as well. Like I think it's calling back to Into the Thick of It very deliberately. So yeah, uh, very good stuff. I really enjoyed both songs.
Yeah, Children of Mana is, I think that might be the only game in the series I haven't played, and I think I'm okay with that, based on what I'm hearing. The reason the soundtrack always sticks out in my mind, and this is very esoteric to me, and just who I am in terms of my nerdiness and my chronicling of things. This was the very first soundtrack that Square Enix published as digital only, like their very first, and they've done plenty digital only since. But I remember being extremely annoyed at the time because, yes, listeners, once upon a time, it was rare for soundtracks to have a digital release, and you typically had to import the CDs from Japan. And my brain didn't know how to categorize or think about this release. It did technically get a physical release if you bought the Mana box set, which was actually like a giant book, this giant green book. It had a 2 CD set with Children of Mana in it. But yeah, at the time it was the first soundtrack that you couldn't get physical version of. It was only digital through iTunes. And I really do like the whole soundtrack. You know, I think Kenji Ito is an incredible composer. The thing I would say about Ito is he's one of the more consistent composers. I feel like if you look over the career of Uematsu or Mitsuda or Shimomura, like you can kind of locate highs or lows, not just for individual soundtracks, but maybe even for like a year or a span of years. I feel like Kenji Ito, like whatever he sets himself to, just comes out consistently good. And I definitely feel that way about this track. I agree with everyone pointing to the similarity to Into the Thick of It, which is a Hiroki Kikuta track. One wonders if they were like, hey, can you make a song that's kind of like that, but your version, like the director saying that to him, and they'll be like, yeah, I'll make sort of the Kenji Ito version of that song. And it works really well. Does it work well in the context of the game? I don't know. It can't help but make the game better based on what you guys are telling me. I'll probably never play it. Apollo Justice, the 4th Ace Attorney game. Man, what a blast of the past to listen to this. Thank you so much for bringing it, Sollosi. I agree with you, Gio, that listening to it on loop in the context of the game, because I also struggled with that puzzle back in the day. Yeah, that was rough. But this performance is super solid, super great. It made me think, I wanted to say this, certainly for the first 3 or 4 games, the courtroom music, you know, the whole courtroom suite music, in my mind, those sound good in their original OST form every time. The other music, your investigation portion, your character themes, I feel like they tend to do better in arrangements than in the original. What is it, the Steel Samurai or Silver Shogun or something from one of the earlier games. That theme sounds really good in a concert, and in the original, like, Game Boy Advance and DS versions, I'm just like, no thanks. I might get mean comments for that, but that's just how I feel. And I love these concerts. There have been so many concert albums. I have only listened to the first 2, so this one from 2008. I don't know who reviewed it, if it was me or someone else, but I think it's the last orchestral concert from the Ace Attorney series that I've listened to, and I feel like there have been like 5 more since then. Like, there's as many of these concerts as there are for like Final Fantasy 14 or Persona. Like, it's a lot to keep track of, and you have to be a pretty hardcore fan to like keep up with it. But I love this 2008 album, and I love this track. I also think it is really neat that Shutakumi, the series developer and creator, put together a song that would grow to be something as cool as this vocal track. So yeah, again, thank you, Sollosi, for bringing this one. I think it's a great song, and again, I think the arrangement brings so much life to it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think it's finally time to let Gio talk about a song, if everyone's good with that. I know you're excited about this one, Gio, and I am excited to hear your thoughts on it. So, what is Block 3 starting with?
We are starting with the Unknown Floor, the arranged version from the Dark Spire. It's composed by Kenichi Arakawa.
All right, and Sollosi is after that.
Right. My second track is Demon Castle Pinnacle from Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. It's by Michiru Yamane back in those heady days where a great many DS games had to have DS in the subtitle.
All right, let's go listen to The Unknown Floor and Demon Castle Pinnacle.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Pat was really pleased that I brought this. This is
Yep.
like probably my favorite DS soundtrack ever. The Dark Spire. It's a forgotten Atlas gem from, I don't know, 2008. And it's by this composer, Kenichi Arakawa, who I think, other than this, is probably most famous for Dragon Seed, the PS1 game about making dragons fight each other. And that soundtrack is also incredible. Like, have you guys listened to it? It's crazy.
I haven't.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
familiar. It's kind of like, it's one of those like if you know kind of soundtracks in like the game music world. Some like people really love it if they've listened to it.
So did he exclusively compose songs for games abbreviated DS?
Yeah, I didn't notice that. But yeah, apparently. No, I think he's also well known for a bunch of shmups, and he's still active today. I think he did this really obscure strategy RPG called the Bokhan Yar. It's like it only came out on Steam, I think, and it came out in Japan, and yeah, he's still active. I gave it a listen the other day, and it was like, oh, it's still good. He still got it. Yeah, he's mostly known for stuff that doesn't come out in English, or if it does come out in English, no one plays it. But and this the Dark Spire, I think, is famously like under the radar. I think it didn't really make a big splash, but it should have, because the soundtrack is crazy. It's full of these really experimental. I guess. Well, it's not really all. It doesn't all sound like this. The Unknown Flora. Actually, it's like it comes in two halves. Like one is like the retrofied chiptune version of the songs, which is I think how. I don't know if it's a toggle. I forget. But yeah. So you can choose between either the chiptune version of these songs or the arranged version of these songs. This one is the Unknown Floor. It's like the kind of a post-game dungeon, and so it's a bit more lighthearted. The other ones are have a bit more of a drone. And then if you notice, like in this song, like there's like he puts like an opera singer singing kind of incomprehensibly, like, yeah, I don't know, like, and then he somehow melds it with like this really sick electronic beat, like drum and no, not drum and bass, but like you know what I mean, like something like that. And like I don't know, it's incredible to me. Like I'd never heard anything like it before. Because like as you go through the game, like he starts to introduce more and more like elements to the music, and like towards the end he starts to introduce like this really creepy opera voice, and the post game is kind of like this release where it's a lot less oppressive sounding, and it's more like it's kind of like a victory lap sounding song. So yeah, that's what this song is. It's a celebration of what you accomplished. It's a very famously hard dungeon crawler, I think, in the style of Wizardry, which I've never played that series, so I can't really say. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out the game if you haven't, if you're into that kind of thing, though. So yeah. As for Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, well, this is just a classic, like it's Michiru Yamane. It's also very danceable, I felt. It has a disco-ish kind of feel, and I just love how it just feels propulsive. Like it just feels like it doesn't really let up with the beat, and I really enjoyed it. I've never played Dawn of Sorrow or any Castlevania game on the DS, so I'm like patiently waiting for.
Oh, Gio, honey,
Oh my God,
come on!
I know. I'm just waiting for Konami to, hopefully put out like the collection like they did for the Game Boy.
Yeah, I hope they do.
Konami is much more interested in re-releasing their own games than making new ones, so that is a real possibility. Maybe
That tracks.
Maybe when our hypothetical dual screen switch happens, that'll be right out the door.
Please, I'll even take like a compromised one screen version of the game. I just want to play it because like I've heard so many good things. And
that would be a struggle with Dawn of Sorrow, because there's a lot of touch screen, like tracing runes onto the screen, casting spells, and sort of pointing where they go on the lower screen in Dawn of Sorrow. It was the second two Castlevania games for DS didn't use the touchscreen mechanics nearly as much, but I think it's because the early DS games were really trying to stress the use of that dual screen. Sorry to transition away from your discussion, Gio, but Dawn of Sorrow is, I think, the oldest game on this list. It came out in 2005, right around a year after the release of the DS, and so its audio maybe isn't as sophisticated as the other games on this list, but I think it sort of, other than just being DS right there in the title, one thing it has in common with the Dark Spire is that this is an end game track. This is near the top of the castle. It's the second to last or maybe third to last zone in the game. It's been so long that I don't 100% remember where the pinnacle is relative to the rest of the end game, but it almost feels like a first level in a Castlevania game, because it has that sort of feeling of forward momentum, and that you might associate with Beginning or Vampire Killer or Dracula's Castle, with the sort of the Belmont strut going in time with the beat. But like you said, because there's a very clear 4 on the floor here, it is sort of almost like a disco song. But I like how it builds, how it the different voices keep getting added, and towards the end you have the sort of weird early DS strings that almost that sound like I don't know, like an oboe that's being squeezed through a tiny pipe or something, into a final strings movement that is that I think is sort of a quite beautiful progression from the beginning of the song. But it's an end game song that gives a feeling of, oh, the final boss is at the end of this hallway, rather than an early game song that has a similar propulsion but is more like we're just starting the adventure. But I really like all 3 of the DS Castlevania games. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. I cannot pick a favorite. Actually, I can. It's Order of Ecclesia, but this is where we are today. But this game is really, really good. It's a direct sequel to Aria of Sorrow for the GBA, so I recommend playing that one first. But this is an absolute worthy Castlevania game. But going back to the Dark Spire, I really struggle to attach a genre to this song, because it sounds like you have that peculiar singing sample, and then the beat goes from sort of more understated to much crunchier when they add the electric guitar to some phrases, but not every phrase. It like I mean, is this like big beat electronica, or is this just sort of a vague, it's a video game song? But it goes a lot of unusual places. I don't know, it's not exactly dissonant, but it is. But because it uses such unusual chords and harmonies, it sort of feels like it's catching my brain off guard, but in a very intriguing way. I'm not really familiar with Arakawa's work, so I'll have to track down more of it. But yeah, this is a banger of a track.
I really like the Dark Spire, as you mentioned, Gio. And yeah, I will say, Sollosi was saying about not knowing what to do with like categorizing genre. That is definitely true, not only of this song, but I would say the whole soundtrack. Like, and Arakawa's style in general is very, like, I don't want to say minimalist. Like, he can be minimalist, but then he can build in the weirdest of ways. He can be very eccentric in the way he chooses to write. I will say that Darkspire did the same sort of thing that Etrian Odyssey did, in that you had talked about the original and the arranged, Gio. So it was originally written in sort of a more bass chip. I can't remember if it... I don't think it's like full on like like square wave 8-bit chiptune, but it's definitely like a downgraded synth platform that it was originally written in, and then it was then they went like how hard can we go on a DS, and that's what the arranged version is. So if you buy the 2-disc soundtrack, disc 1's arranged, disc 2 is the original, and we're going to hear something like that again pretty soon. But I really like. I actually can't decide if I like the original or the arranged more for Unknown Floor. And I think I struggle with that through most of the tracks on Dark Spire because they are very different and they both sound really good for very different reasons. And I think Arakawa is just a very clever composer. And I don't know too much about him because, again, because of what I do, because of what I choose to focus on, he hasn't really done a lot of RPGs or really games that fit RPG fan scope of coverage. But I've listened to a few tracks by him. I've heard some of the shmups that he's worked on. But I always really liked the soundtrack. Definitely encourage people to dig up more. If you liked Unknown Floor, if you like this style, the other Floor tracks, they can get weird. They can get more weird than this, but totally worth it in my opinion. As for the Dawn of Sorrow track, yes, I was thinking to myself as you guys were talking about it, if I were to create a playlist for like a Halloween dance party, I think I could make it entirely out of Castlevania tracks and get away with it, because there are so many songs that are not just danceable, but really sort of in that disco dance vibe, especially Yamane. She's like a queen of it. She's very good at it. And I definitely get that vibe. Also, Sollosi, when you said the Belmont strut, I'm just thinking of like a Belmont dancing to Saturday Night Fever. All of a sudden, it's just.
I'm not against it.
I like the picture was just vivid for me, and I do feel like this track is doing that for me. I think you guys had mentioned, the sort of pulsing 4 on the floor drums, like so good, super catchy. I also just want to say, every time I see Yamane's name, I think I mentioned this every time she's mentioned on Rhythm Encounter. Michiru Yamane is active on YouTube. She does. She has a baby grand piano in her home, and she does piano solo arranges primarily of her own work from the Castlevania series and the Bloodstained series. And I think she didn't do this song, but she recently did a Dawn of Sorrow track like a few weeks ago. It was her most recent upload. So like, people need to follow Michiru Yamane.
Oh, that's cool.
Her channel is like woefully underviewed. She might have like, I think she has less than 100K subscribers, and that's a crime. Like, what she puts out is so good, and she does it with such frequency. I just don't understand why people aren't following her more. She does such a good job. Everyone check out Michiru Yamane. If you love Castlevania, you got to celebrate her. She's amazing.
We did a Castlevania episode of Rhythm Encounter around 2 years ago near Halloween, and I brought a song from Castlevania Order of Ecclesia to that episode. It's Crystal Blue, I think, is what it's called. And when I was looking for that track or versions of that track, I stumbled across her YouTube channel and a piano arrangement of that song, and I almost brought it to the episode, but I think I ultimately went with the in-game version, because I usually gravitate towards in-game versions for Rhythm Encounter, right? Because I part of why I love video game music is because I can attach game context to the song. But yeah, like, finding out that she, even if she's not composing as much as she did in the 2000s when there was a new Castlevania game every 18 months. It's very, very cool to see her still celebrating her work.
Yeah, she's so cool. She really has embraced like the body of her work and celebrates it in a way that, honestly, I'd like to see more composers too. I just think it's a really wonderful thing. So thanks for letting me put that shout out in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll make sure that is in our links in the show notes, because I'm pretty sure I included it last time you mentioned it too. Probably. But I mean, it's worth mentioning though. I mean, that she's still doing stuff, especially that she recently did Dawn of Sorrow, so that's cool.
She did compose Dawn of Sorrow with someone else, but I double checked the soundtrack to figure out which one of them composed this song. Even though it is unmistakably Yamane, it is. But she wasn't the only person on this soundtrack. She not Dawn of Sorrow, but the following game, Portrait of Ruin, was a collaboration with someone we're going to be talking about very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, before we do that, I have a few thoughts. This song, going back to the Dark Spire, Gio, the song is so you. I like that you described it as experimental and like some of the things it does. It made me think of, well, several songs you brought on in the past, but the first thing it made me think of was was it the Silver Case?
Yep,
Yeah.
I thought that too.
Yeah. It's so cool. Just like funky electronic beats and record scratches, and I kept trying to think of a word to describe the vocals that were going on here, and I don't have a word for it. But it comes together in this really cool arrangement that I would not have expected. Not that I know much about this game, but I wouldn't have guessed something like this would come out of it. And I listened to the chiptune version too, just to see. It's like, okay, well, obviously, like they went like really experimental with this one, but the chiptune one actually doesn't sound drastically different. Like the instrumentation is different, but it still has that same kind of energy. It's just, chiptuney. Really neat. I looked at our review of this just because, like we talked about, like it wasn't like a huge game at the time, but we did review it. Sam reviewed it for us, which was one of my favorite reviewers of that time period of the site.
Sam Hansen.
Sam Hansen was great.
Oh, what a cool dude. Cool dude.
Sam was great. He came to at least a couple E3s with us, I think.
Yeah, I remember 09. He was at 09 with us.
Yeah, but his review, it was basically like this game like just destroyed me kind of thing. He compared it to Wizardry, like people would say, but it's just like he just found the game so difficult, and not complaining. Like it's like that there is a market for that. In fact, I think there's more of a market for it now. So I'd be curious what would happen if that game came out now.
Switch 2 with 2 screens. Come on.
Right. Also, I noticed just last year, in 2023, this soundtrack got released in digital formats, which I'm not sure if it was before or not, but the label is Success Game Music, and it looks like they republished, I don't know, a little over a dozen of their things last year, and this was one of them. So it's actually readily available again.
Well, I think they did that digital republishing at the same time that they published and set up publishing for that game you're talking about, Buccaneer. It's like Buccaneer, but with cats. Cat Girl Buccaneers. When they published that RPG and the soundtrack for it, I think they licensed all their older stuff and put it out last year. So that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I mean, so many of these, I don't think it's the case too much with this episode, but so many times we'll do an episode and I go through to like find links. We always have links in the show notes of like where to get this. I'm like, sometimes we'll do one and there's like nothing. Like the Mario episode we did a few months ago, I'm like, most of them don't even have soundtracks, and the couple that might have, like, not available.
Hard to find.
Yeah. So it's really cool that this is still available. And then on to Castlevania. I knew I could count on someone to bring Castlevania here. It was definitely on my short list. If it wasn't Sollosi, it only would have been because someone got there before Sollosi. But I knew something would be here, and I'm glad it's here. I hadn't thought about back in the day how some of the Castlevania games had like multiple composers on them. But like you said, Sollosi, it's like it's very clear who composed this one. In fact, it almost sounds like it could have been like an unused track from Symphony of the Night that just made its way into this game. Just so many of her like hallmark sounds from that and some other Castlevania soundtracks that she's done are here. That cool introduction, the percussion, those sounds that are like gothic but energetic. I really like the idea of it being like a dance song. I don't know which Belmont would be dancing to it. If we wanted something unexpected or maybe get some like a dragon energy, I guess it could be any of them. Take one of the gruff, serious ones and put him on a dance floor, because otherwise we have Captain N, Simon Belmont. I don't think anyone wants that.
Well, I mean, the Belmont in Dawn of Sorrow is Julius Belmont, but I'm not against something like maybe Richter doing it, but there's whip cracks to his points. His
Okay,
steps.
yep. Well, there it is. All right, are we ready for our last block?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
we're already at the last block.
We are.
This is exciting. Well, I picked one of the tracks for this last block. I just mentioned Etrian Odyssey when we were talking about Dark Spire. I picked a song from the very first Etrian Odyssey, which was composed by Yuzo Koshiro. The song is called Scene, Blue and White, Event, Truth. That's like 4 titles in a title. But Blue and White is generally what people know the song to be called.
Yeah, it's one of those titles that you can parse it easier in text.
Yes.
Yeah, that has major arrangement in gray and black, portrait of the painter's mother energy.
Yes, exactly.
which is the official title of Whistler's Mother, one of the most famous paintings in the world.
Yep.
Nice. All right,
And then Gio, you brought one too, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if yours was blue and white, mine is black and white. It's Pokemon Black and White. The song Anville Town from later in the game it's by Go Ichinose.
all right.
And so hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, let's go listen to Blue and White and Anvil Town.
All right, you guys heard the last two tracks from our fourth DS block here. That was Blue and White from Etrian Odyssey and Anville Town from Pokemon Black and White. And I want to start talking about how much I love Etrian Odyssey. Known as Sakaiju no Mekyu in Japan, the Etrian Odyssey series is this wild, colorful, lovely series of dungeon crawlers in the style of wizardry, and so similar to the Dark Spire. And when Yuzo Koshiro, he of Streets of Rage and ActRaiser fame, and the original Ys of all things, like classic composer who kind of stepped away for a while in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then bam, has just been going hardcore on this series for 5 full entries, 2 remakes, and a couple spin-offs. When he came back with Etrian Odyssey, it was just a musical powerhouse. And one of the coolest things he did was that he did 2 versions of the audio, which the Dark Spire copied, but no problem with that. I think it's a great thing to do, honestly. What Koshiro did was he originally wrote it all on NEC's PC-88 hardware, which is what he also wrote the first Ys soundtrack on. So if you listen to, I think, disc 2 of the OST, or you can, if you're playing the game, you can switch which sound source you're using. You can hear what he originally wrote it as, and then he did like this DS sound upgrade, so it was sort of like a synthy orchestra. So I pulled the DS sound version of Blue and White, but when you listen to it, you'll notice that tonally it still sounds quite synthy. The upgrade on this one wasn't too different than the original PC-88 version, and I actually really like that personally. There are a couple, most of what this game soundtrack is the layers or floors of the dungeon. There's 5 main ones and then a 6th bonus one, kind of like Unknown Floor on Dark Spire. And great soundtrack. But these scene tracks, there's one that's red and black, and then there's this one which is blue and white. This is the event music where I'm not going to spoil it for y'all, but whether you experience it in the original version or the remake, Etrian Odyssey Untold, the Millennium Girl, there's this thing you find out when you get to the 5th layer that you're like, oh, everything we thought was going on and everything we believed, not quite true. Here's the truth. That's what you get with Blue and White. It's great music, sort of revelatory for what happens for your party in the game there. So yeah, I love the whole soundtrack. I love the concept of doing 2 versions, and I think it works really well for these style of games that have their roots in something very old school. But then, at the time it was new, and it's crazy to think that, I think Etrian Odyssey got a trilogy release on Steam a few years ago, and maybe just last year. But even then it was like 15-year anniversary, and I'm like, what? Like, to me, it's still new. That shows how old I am. Speaking of, I also still feel like Pokemon Black and White is new, even though it's generation 5 out of 9. So it's kind of in the middle now. And I've really been on a Pokemon kick over the last few years. And I don't like Black and White as much as a lot of people do. And I apparently hold a very unpopular opinion. But I will agree that its soundtrack is quite good. Go Ichinose is an incredible composer. He's been working on the series since, I think, Gen 3 or Gen 4. So he's pretty much longtime series composer. The town themes in Gen 5 are all really good. They're very distinct from one another. I think that really matters, because that kind of colors what you're getting into when you go to that town's related gym, right? That usually has a lot to do with how you're feeling about the town and what's going on. I really like the sound of Anville Town. I think a lot of town themes in Pokemon are very bright, very colorful, and upbeat. Sometimes they can be weird, like Lavender Town, which has all this lore and sort of urban myths about. But Anville Town has, to me, a very solid, distinct sound. I really like The use of the synths, I feel like Ichinose really worked his way up from Game Boy Advance to DS and took advantage of more sophisticated synths here very well. So, and yeah, as far as the town themes go, I think this is one of the better one of the more like, if I were to go and listen to Black and White again, like the OST, Anville Town's probably, top 3 town themes for me.
Oh wow, that's high praise. Yeah, for me, like I went with Anvil Town. Like I agree, it's one of the best town themes in the game. I was gonna say, like, I think as someone I guess substantially younger than Pat. No offense to Pat.
It's all good.
I'm very young.
It's all good. I'm 40. I can take it.
Yeah. I have intense nostalgia for Black and White, and I'm keenly aware of how old it is now. It's almost 15 years old, I think. And like I guess I went with Anvil Town because it's like, it's like the end of this era of Pokemon. Like after Black and White, they stopped composing songs like this. This is like a song that could have been made and that could have come out in Gold and Silver or thereabouts. And I don't know, like I love Go Ichinose. He's like one of my favorite Pokemon composers. He's also responsible for, I know he's still around, but like I think he does like less songs nowadays. And I know he's responsible for that song that you brought in the Pokemon episode. I remember Lively Lily, like the her.
Oh yeah, from Sun and Moon.
Yeah, and I really like that. He's very, very talented, but he doesn't do a lot of like songs these days. And it's like one of
he did a lot of. He didn't do as much on Scarlet and Violet, but he did a lot of Legends Arceus, and I'm hoping he'll be on Legends ZA.
Yeah, probably. Actually, I haven't really listened to Legends Arceus yet, so
it's a great soundtrack.
I'm glad though. Yeah, and yeah, I just actually in Anvil Town, there's not really much going on, so you can kind of tell from the music. It's like a very rural, hard to get to town. And it's just serene. Like I just have fun memories of being here, and I think it's the place where like you can like play the post game kind of like battle subway. I think it's been a while though, but
yeah. It's basically at the end of the subway line. You can only get there via the tunnel, and it's so out of the way that it's very easy to just play the whole game without visiting Anvil Town.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was like kind of a slightly overlooked song, but it's very nice. So I brought it. Sometimes it's just that simple. And I guess talk about Etrian Odyssey a bit. Actually, fun fact. I think Yuzo Koshiro is also active on YouTube. Not as active as Michiru Yamane, I think, but like
he's very active on Twitter.
He's on Twitter all the time.
He's on social media. He'll post in both English and Japanese, and he is so much cooler than I am as a person. It is it's almost embarrassing. He'll just be like, hey, he'll post some pictures of old music equipment and be like, this is the synthesizer and the tracker that I used to compose a bunch of songs on East, and it's like damn, it's like, you still out there killing it, Yuzo Koshiro.
Yeah, dude's awesome.
Yeah, he's like been posting this stuff for free, like his original PC-88 like compositions, and like oh man, super cool.
I still cannot get over the fact that possibly my favorite song in East, a series that I love, is Dreaming for East 1, and Yuzo Koshiro was either 20 or 21 when he composed it. Yeah, so if you want to feel underaccomplished for your age, there you go.
Yeah, he was a college kid writing some of the best music out there. Crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
yeah. Oh no, that's okay. I love this song. I've never finished Etrian Odyssey. I've actually, my only real exposure to it, other than like I did play a bit of the Switch remaster of the original game, but like I did play the 3DS Etrian Odyssey Untold, which if you play the story mode, I actually would advise don't, because like kind of ruins the twist of the game that Pat was talking about. And
really,
yeah,
you know it a lot earlier. It kind of, yeah. I've played both versions, and the remake does kind of blow the surprise, and it's not nearly as surprisey. In trying to tell a very like single player narrative story with the remake, it got a little messy. I think it is better to play in its original form, at least the first time. I agree with you, Gio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think I ever got to this song in particular, but it's very good. It's a very moody song. Like I can imagine like so you said this is like the reveal, the big reveal of what is really going on, and it's just another testament to Yuzo Koshiro's genius, I guess, because it's very, very good. He can do pretty much anything, Streets of Rage. The range is crazy. So
yeah, man, Go Straight might be my favorite song on a Genesis soundtrack. That's Streets of Rage. Maybe you can do a Genesis episode just and pretend Streets of Rage is an RPG. I wouldn't be against it.
I'm in.
Didn't we do a Genesis episode? Am I making that up?
No, I don't think so. But I think they did a Phantasy Star episode like a decade ago, or that was about 80% Genesis. But I don't think you did a Genesis episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Phantasy Star was, if not the first, it was one of the first like 3 episodes of Rhythm Encounter.
I mean,
that was back before
we know exactly why and who that is the case for.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
That was also before we decided, like, hey, everyone bring on 2 songs. And we're like, I think that episode 2 or 3 of Rhythm Encounter has like 35 songs or something. It was a little long. But yeah, if you want to listen to most of the original Phantasy Star soundtracks, go listen to the first couple episodes of Rhythm Encounter. But before you do, you should finish this episode. So Etrian Odyssey, this song is really cool. It has a really cool soundscape that's it's like a bit foreboding and a little sparse. It sometimes, some parts of it sound like, and I mean this in a good way, it's like an arrangement of an NES game. And I mean that because, like, people often talk about how older games had, not to disparage any newer ones, but like a lot of times older games had a stronger sense of melody than a lot of newer ones because they had less to work with. So they were really reliant on like coming up with memorable tunes, which is one reason why I think a lot of those older songs and soundtracks still hold up today and lend themselves to rearrangement. So that's what I get from this one. Like it sort of sounds like something that was composed a very long time ago, with just a really strong melody, and the instrumentation is somewhere between like a chip tune and more refined sound. And I like it. I like the blending of those 2 styles with the music itself. The Pokemon song, of course, is less mysterious, but a really nice, just laid back tune. And I even mentioned in my notes, I'm sure Gio or someone will mention this, that this is an optional area. So I think it's neat that there's this place that you don't really have to go to or you could miss. And it just has this kind of quiet vacation spot kind of feel to it. It's really comfy, basically. So very different from some of our other dungeon diving music, but I enjoyed it. So.
Well, I guess it's my turn. Etrian Odyssey is a series that I've always admired from afar, but it's just a little bit too hardcore for me. I've gotten medium far in the first Etrian Odyssey game and the 4th one. I thought the 4th one was quite good, actually. But in both cases, I just got a little bit I don't know. Like I got slightly stuck because there's a non-trivial grind in that game. There's a lot of interwoven systems, the map building and the resource gathering. It's just there's a lot of video game in those games, and I couldn't really handle any of them to get past probably the 3rd stratum and the 4th one, and not even as far in any others. But I own something like 4 of them, and my girlfriend's played all of them. This strikes me as just an extremely good version of like a cave theme in an RPG. It's dark and foreboding. But it's a little serene, and I mean, and his choice of like sort of chip tunes mixed with some pretty sophisticated like guitar sounds and percussion. It's like, I mean, I don't want to say it's unmistakably Koshiro because like unless you count like certain kind of like club jam elements to his music, he doesn't really, I don't think, have a signature sound other than it being awesome. But he will always play with rhythm in very in very interesting ways. But yeah, I will never get tired of hearing Yuzo Koshiro on this show, and I saw him DJ a live set at Magfest many years ago, probably in 2013 or 2014. I forget exactly when.
It was 13. I got food poisoning that year.
Oh no, that was the year.
No, that was not the same food poisoning year that I got really sick.
No.
Yeah, I think I got food poisoning in 2016.
Yeah. No, I had this soundtrack called Misty Blue, which it's this visual novel that's super old, but on the second half of the album, it's an alternate soundboard version of ActRaiser, but it's a Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack, and so I had him sign that soundtrack. Despite being sick as a dog, I came down and waited in line just so I could get him to sign that.
I didn't get him to sign anything, but I did get Nobuo Uematsu and the Earthbound Papas to sign my Super Famicom copy of Final Fantasy IV.
Nice.
The previous year, 2012, when they performed. But I live very just outside the DC area, so Magfest was the show I went to every year since 2000. I think I only missed one between 2005 and 2020.
Wow. I can't believe I didn't know you all those years.
No. I mean, for 1 year it was in Charlottesville when I was going to college there. So it was like the head of Magfest at the time would advertise Magfest at our college gaming club, which is how I found out about it in 04 or 05.
Wow.
But anyway, that's way too inside baseball for this show. I have three things to say about that Pokemon song. The first one is more largely about Black and White. Patrick, Gen 5 is my favorite. I'm only a few years younger than you, so I don't have maybe the same kind of age nostalgia that Gio does, but I just think that Black and White 1 has probably the best Pokemon story, and Black and White 2 has not nearly as good a story, but a very, very fun exploration of Pokemon Endgame, and is a very, very fun follow-up. I adore Gen 5. We even did a retro encounter episode of favorite Pokemon gems where I defend Gen 5 quite a bit, and surprisingly, I was surprised that the other two people on the show also like Gen 5. Like I thought it was uncommon for my Gen 5 love, but no, we're out there.
No, I think there's a lot of Gen 5 love.
Yeah, there is, but like 6 or 7 years ago, I wasn't aware there was quite so much, because it was a black sheep and not super well received by the mainstream fans right when it came out. But with perspective, because again, like there's none of the preceding 470 or whatever, however many Pokemon were in the base game. You see not a Pikachu nor a Pidgey until the post game of the first one.
Right.
Which I think is bold, but some people were upset by it. Anyway, it's enough about Gen 5 at large. I think there's two kind of amazing things about the Anville theme. First of all is the diegetic flute. That flute that carries most of the melody. In parts of the town you can't even hear it. There's an NPC playing the flute in the train station area.
That's right.
And you hear, and she's silent at some parts of the town, but as you get closer to her, the flute starts out muffled and then gets clearer, and you get this version of the song if you're standing near her in the train station. So that's kind of crazy that they would have that in a in a DS game, and it's a really, really cool effect. The second thing that I love about this song is on the official soundtrack to Black and White, one of the bonus tracks is an arranged version of this song that's called Lullaby for Trains. Because in the game itself, when you talk to, I don't think you can talk to the flute girl, but if you talk to one of the people near her, he says, "Oh yeah, the trains don't run here anymore." So she's playing a lullaby for the sleeping trains. So the bonus track version is called Lullaby for Trains, and it's mostly a faithful rendition of this song, with better instrumentation. But there's a crazy I think like rattly old train station like ragtime break in the middle of it. That's very, very fun and unexpected. So yeah, if you think this song is very good, I strongly suggest you try out you listen to the Lullaby for Trains version from the OST.
I'd forgotten that arranged track. Thank you for the
I'm
reminder.
definitely checking it out.
It's,
I didn't know about it.
Yeah, but anyway, love Black and White. This song is great. You guys are all on the money for its vibe and Anville within the game. But yeah, diegetic flute and ragtime arranged version are my first thoughts with this one.
Wow. Oh, good info. Good insight.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd forgotten about that arranged track. I'm going to dig it up after we're done recording.
It starts out quite faithful to this version, but then it isn't.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I want to hear it too. All right. Well, that was a great lineup of songs. Fantastic insight from everyone. So thank you, all of you, for being here. So as we close up the episode, I always like to mention the games that made their debut on Rhythm Encounter, and I typed out the entire list and then counted it and realized it was 7. So in fact, every game today, except for Apollo Justice, is new to Rhythm Encounter.
Man, I broke the streak.
Well, yes, but this is the first time that album has been on, so that was still new. We've only had...
Still counts.
Yes.
Still counts.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, when you think of it like that, everything today was new to the show, so that's exciting. Coming up next on Rhythm Encounter in a couple weeks, I mentioned this at the top of the episode, but we are doing an episode just like this, but with PSP RPGs. Excited about that one. And after that, I don't know what we're naming this exactly, but the short version is Weird Song Titles. We
insert Motoi Sakuraba track names.
Sakuraba is what inspired it. Like he has.
Oh, are you gonna play Moistened to Feel from Tokyo Xanadu?
See, that's the thing. Like, there's so many out there, and that's the only requirement. It doesn't have to sound like anything. Fun with it. It just has to have a strange name and be a song that you enjoy. So, yeah, that'll be fun. If you enjoyed this episode and you have feedback or thoughts on this or other topics or anything else you want to share with us, you can email the show and me at music@rpgfan.com. What is the best way for people to reach you, Sollosi?
Well, my favorite way for you to reach me is to listen to RPG Fans Retro Encounter. It's our weekly podcast that I am the main showrunner of. We just did a couple episodes on Dark Souls, and I think after this episode we're going to be doing an episode on Undertale, and then an episode on ranking or giving tiers to our favorite Final Fantasy games. So you can look forward to that. Also, you can find me on social media. I am at Evoker for Dogs on Instagram, Blue Sky, and RPG Fans Discord.
Nice. And how about you, Pat?
I'm pretty active on Twitter under the handle Gameadactyl. That is GAME and the letter O and then dactyl. Good luck spelling it. And you can also just hit me up, pgan, GANN, at rpgfan.com. I check my email pretty regularly and am happy to respond to any feedback.
All right. And Gio?
Yeah, similarly, you can find me at geo@rpgfan.com. I'm not very good at checking my emails there. Like, basically, I'm only there to look for news, and if there's none, I delete everything. So hopefully, I didn't delete any of your messages before.
You just delete all these compliments that are coming your way you don't even know about.
Oh my god, I need those sometimes. So
send Geo
please.
compliments now.
And then or you can message me at Discord. I go by 10B Star there. TENBI Star.
Nice. All right. Well, Rhythm Encounter is not the only show under the RPG Fan podcast umbrella. We also have Retro Encounter, which I would explain what's coming up and what was featured on there, but you just heard about it. So go.
Sorry, I did it out of order. That's my bad.
That's fine. It was a good segue. So yeah, definitely check out Retro Encounter. Retro Encounter posts every Thursday. We also have Random Encounter, which posts every Monday opposite of Rhythm Encounter. We recently did hit a milestone episode with Random Encounter, episode 300. And that was me and Sollosi and Jono and Hillary on talking about game prediction or game industry predictions. And we're going to see which of them come true or don't in 4 years, at which point Jono owes someone a game. So we'll see how that goes. There will be another episode of Random, I think, before this goes up, but I don't know as of this recording what it's going to be. But you should check it out anyway. You can also find RPG Fan on many social media platforms as RPG Fan.com. So you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. We have a Discord. All of these links are in our show notes. Our website is rpgfan.com. We also have a shop on RPG Fan. We encourage you to check out. We have merch on there. Actually, just added, I don't know how many people even know about this, but we just added hats to the shop, or rather they were added to the shop for us, and I found out, but there's a couple styles of hats with the RPG Fan logo on them. We actually are getting some samples in very soon to check those out. So if you're waiting for hats, those are there in the shop along with mugs, t-shirts, and lots of other stuff. So check those out. The other part of our shop is our RPG Fan review card collection. It's a printed book of about 300 of our Instagram mini review cards. So I every time I talk about it on here, I just say how great it is, and I think it is great. I'm very happy with it. Everyone I know who's gotten one has been happy. So you can find all of this stuff at rpgfan.com/shop. Finally, if you enjoyed this episode, please review us, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, wherever it is you listen, on YouTube. All of that helps us get the word out and get more people listening. So I pulled the panel today about a bonus track, and then also offered the fact that I had one in mind if no one else did, and everyone liked mine. So I guess I'm going with the bonus track today. From Contact, an RPG by Atlas that I didn't actually play, but I think the music is cool. I don't know the full context of this, but has anyone played Contact here?
I have a little bit.
So it sounds like this is like a game, a little RPG within the game or something.
Okay, I don't know.
Well, it could be. That's what it sounds like. So we'll go with it. Anyway, so yeah, our bonus DS track today is from Contact. It's called Dragon and Dragon Outdoor (parentheses RPG game). So that's why I'm thinking that's what it is. But whatever.
Yes.
Either way,
Yep.
It's a very cool track. It stood out to me when I was browsing, so that's what we're going to go out with. So thank you all for being here today. This was a whole lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoyed listening as well. So we'll see you next time for PSP RPGs, and we're going to leave you with Dragon and Dragon Outdoor from Contact. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You don't actually one of the most truncated titles in the entire world is the city of Los Angeles, because the full title for it is El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora del Reina de Los Angeles del Rio Porindicula, but it's often shortened down to L.A. So it's
Wow.
it's
Are you
it's
serious?
yeah,